Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in this Tuesday afternoon here in downtown Providence. As we usually do, kick off the show down at the University of Virginia with Professor of Political Science, Jennifer Lawless. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Well, I'd say we continue to break down post-election politics, but one last remaining election, I believe we still have, is there anything else hanging in the balance? Mississippi today, the runoff. Does it look like it's going to be a fait accompli?
I think it's virtually impossible to imagine a scenario whereby Cindy Hyde-Smith does not win, despite the incredibly offensive things that she said over the course of the last couple of weeks. It's terrain that's very favorable to her. So this is one of those states where it's almost impossible to envision a Republican losing.
And does that go to sort of the rhetoric? Did we see, maybe other examples of, again, just maybe in districts that lean one way or another, that it's nearly impossible if folks have an inclination to a particular candidate, that even what seems like a October or November surprise just doesn't move the needle?
I think the only thing that moves the needle beyond partisanship is something that's so egregious that it's difficult for people to come to terms with. So the Alabama Senate race last year, where Roy Moore was basically accused of being a pedophile, allowed Doug Jones, a Democrat, to eke out a win by the skin of his teeth. And it seems that being a racist is less offensive to people than being a pedophile, which is why Cindy Hyde-Smith is probably going to get elected tonight.
And let's talk about these races that are too close to call. Well, this is a runoff today, but the ones that they are still been counting and declaring winners in. You hear folks grumbling about the votes, where they're coming from, the length of time. I mean, was there really anything out of the ordinary in this particular election cycle? I mean, you've seen the Florida memes, but in terms of how the election process works.
No, so this was pretty standard. The problem for a lot of people this time around was that there were many more close elections than there usually are. And so typically it takes this long to count all of the votes and get the final vote tallies, but the victor doesn't hang in the balance because the elections aren't that close. So this time, because there were so many districts where we had competitive races, there's been more national attention, I think, to how difficult it is to compile these votes across the country.
So let's talk about what's really taking a lot of the national attention right now. And of course, that's the caravan now at the U.S. border and what we've seen there. And it seems like, every day, what's next type of scenario as we see migrants, again, try to come to the United States and declare asylum. We see what the president is saying. Do we see this really being protracted? Is there a breaking point?
I mean, I would have thought that we had already hit the breaking point. I thought that the rhetoric had devolved into as aggressive and inhospitable as rhetoric could possibly be around the time of the midterms. But now you've got a situation where the Trump administration is actually telling border and customs agents that they can use lethal force if need be, that they can use tear gas, that they can do anything that they want to protect civilian law. And I just think that basically what has happened is that Donald Trump has made he's created a self-fulfilling prophecy. He said that there was going to be violence, and so he's generated the violence.
And as you said, you thought it reached that breaking point. It's almost unfathomable to imagine how long we're going to see this continue to dominate the news cycle, because this is not the front of a number of caravans making their way up. I mean, this is not the first time that large groups of folks have come, again, to the border as well. But do we expect this to be the top story nationally every day for the next few weeks?
I think it can be, especially if that's what the administration wants. And given that this is a situation where Donald Trump really doesn't need to rely on Congress, he's able to do more unilaterally and push forward the agenda that he's espoused since he was elected. Given that he's obviously feeling pretty threatened about the investigatory power that the Democrats will have come January, it's not that surprising that he wants to keep the focus on an issue where he can pull the strings.
Well, as you had mentioned with the Mueller investigation, the Mueller probe prior to the election definitely was a lot more subdued given the politics of the season. But now we just saw Mueller coming out saying Manafort lied, lock him up. So it's pretty clear that Mueller is back, sleeves up and into it. Is anyone really surprised that Paul Manafort lied?
I mean, I think it's sort of existentially, no, right? At this macro level, no, we know that Paul Manafort is a liar. I think there is some sense of surprise in that when he agreed to cooperate with Mueller in ostensibly exchange for a shorter prison sentence, there were incentives for him to tell the truth. Now, he's behaved badly before, right? He was under house arrest and then he wasn't able to follow those rules and was sent to jail. So in some ways, it's not that different from other, decisions that he's made that just sort of fly in the face of what is common sense. But given the stakes, I think there is a little bit of a surprise. Now, the more important fact than that he lied, I think, is that Mueller is willing to hold him accountable. And that sends a very, very strong signal to every other witness and every other person who has said that they were planning to cooperate.
Now, have we seen the ramifications? I believe it was clearly one was making sure that he gets now right into do not pass go, go directly to jail. Extended sentence time is basically everything that he had negotiated off the table. Do we even know?
We don't know, and a lot of it will be, I think, in Mueller's discretion. So the extent to which he's lied will probably be able to determine based on the extent to which the deal seems not to be moving forward.
So we like to discuss ahead of time what we're going to be talking about nationally and locally, but I've got kind of the bonus round, and that's the decoration of the White House by the First Lady. We saw a strong reaction last year, another strong reaction to the red trees this year. Could Melania Trump, given the press climate, given everything going on, put out a display that would have been widely embraced? Or do you think that just red trees in general just set everybody off?
I mean, so I've been combing the internet today for public opinion regarding these red trees, and it's very, very difficult to find people that think they're a good idea or appropriate or pretty. I think that she would obviously be generating criticism regardless of what she did, but she clearly went out on a limb here, and I don't think that it's at all surprising that there's been some backlash. Now, in the broad scheme of things, it's this kind of criticism that the Trump administration should be embracing, because this is short-lived, it can go away, and it's really, really superficial. When we compare it to some of the criticisms that the administration is getting regarding immigration and the caravan and the Mueller investigation, I think it's not that surprising that they wanted to put out a lot of these red trees, because better talk about that than tear gas.
Yeah, the red trees were a signature statement, if you will. I believe last year that was touted as being too dark of a sort of a Christmas tableau, and this year certainly went Republican red. Looking ahead, we're entering the last month of the calendar year here. What are we keeping an eye on inside the Beltway?
I think it's going to be all Mueller all the time. It seems like both sides of the aisle believe that he's finishing up this investigation. We know that there are a bunch of sealed indictments. We also know that during the election, he was doing his work. Information just wasn't being transmitted to the public. So I sense that we're nearing an end, and the end is going to align nicely with the Democrats taking control of the House in January. At which point they can decide how they want to respond to the report, if there is one, if Whitaker decides to release one, as well as what other investigations they want to pursue as a result of what comes out in that report.
And as you said, keeping an eye on Mueller, I mean, it's always tough to gauge the time frame. Do we have any sense? Could it be weeks, or could we see waiting for something, more encapsulating in the new year?
I mean, it might be waiting until the new year. I would bet that in the next few weeks we'll see some more high-profile people either testify or be taken down, or we'll learn more about what they had to say behind the scenes. So I don't think there will be silence from the investigation up until Christmas. I'm just not sure that it'll conclude fully by then.
Okay, well, we'll continue to check in with you down at the University of Virginia. As always, Jennifer Lawless, Professor of Political Science. Appreciate your taking the time to Skype in.
Have a good day.
Okay, thanks. We're going to let Jennifer Lawless go, and we're going to be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center with our next guest. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock show, kicked off with Jennifer Lawless at the University of Virginia. Now getting a little more local here. Stephen R. Porter with Stillwater Books. Thank you for coming back in.
Glad to be here, thank you.
We'll get an update on the bookstore in Pawtucket shortly, but we have you in here because of the big event this weekend, the Rhode Island Author Expo on December 1st. Give folks the nuts and bolts.
Well, believe it or not, it's our 6th annual. And this year we'll be featuring 135 published authors, all who'll be there selling books, signing books, talking about books, and there are all kinds of other things happening throughout the day, presentations, panels, workshops. It's going to be great.
And we've run the piece to the preview, but getting here the inside scoop. Tell us a little bit about your choice of keynote speakers.
Well, we have two that we really want to let everybody know about. One is Mike Stanton, who has a new book. A lot of people remember Mike for his days with the Providence Journal. Also, he wrote the Prince of Providence, which is the big Buddy Cianci biography. But he has a book on Rocky Marciano called Unbeaten, and he's going to do a presentation for us on turning history into the written word and how that process works.
Have you had a chance to read the book yet?
I have not. No, it's brand new.
Brandy Newey, okay. Mike Stanton and the other keynote speaker?
We also have Lisa Gardner with us. Now, Lisa is a best-selling author. A lot of people might not realize she spent a lot of time in Rhode Island. She lived in Wakefield for a time, and she's been #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list with her thrillers. And she's going to talk about character development and how she creates her characters in her books.
So talk with us, being the 6th annual now Author Expo here, about who comes to the event. Is it people who just love literature? Is it writers? Is it the combination of just everyone interested in everything local writing?
Well, that's really it. I mean, early on, and it still is an event designed for readers, people who like books. It's kind of like walking into a library or a bookstore and having all the authors sitting next to the books while you're in there. And that's really what it's for, is to come in, and it's just coincidentally in the middle of the shopping season. So you can come in and look at the books and talk to a lot of local authors. But the first couple of expos we did, we realized a lot of writers were coming in too. And we started to develop a lot of the programs and a lot of the features of the expo around as much about the art and craft of writing as it is the sale of books.
Now you said 135 authors.
Right.
How far back do they go? Months saying, Stephen, how can I take part in this event? I mean, that's a big, overwhelming response.
It's incredible. I mean, our association, the Association of Rhode Island Authors, right now has 335 members, all who are authors or about to be authors who live here in Rhode Island. We start taking reservations for our expo in June, and it's usually filled up by the end of the summer. And even as I was sitting waiting to come on here now, I get a text from someone wanting to know if there's any more room for one more.
Can you squeeze in more folks?
We're full, unfortunately. We do have a wait list.
A wait list. I mean, packed to the gills. So, talk about the average visitor experience. As you said, it's like going in and having the author next to the book. Do you find that folks like to kind of mill around and discover new ones? Do they have their favorites? Is it a combination of the both?
People seem to come in and just to take it all in. I mean, it's a little overwhelming at first, so I don't want to intimidate anybody. But you walk into the Roads on the Pawtucket, and it's a big place, and it's full of books and authors. And you go to the first few tables, and you think, wow, this is really interesting, and you realize you still have 132 to go.
You can spend the whole day there.
But you can spend the whole day there easily if you like books. And even this year, we've kind of built in a little children's activity area.
Okay, so bring the kids.
See Santa, do some activities, and kind of keep everybody involved in it. But if you like books, it's the place to be. You don't want to miss that. Okay,
we've again had this link up before, but give folks the 5 W's. Where, when? We know why.
We know why. Saturday, December 1st, that's this Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Roads on the Pawtucket, right in the middle of Cranston. It's easy to find. Come on in, free parking, free admission. There may even be a food truck or two there. We'll have presentations all day long on different writing and reading topics, and just come and enjoy the day.
So what's the day like for you? You must be the master organizer, just, orchestrating the day to make sure it runs smoothly. Do you get to go and interact with the folks who are presenting?
We do the best we can. We have a committee of 8 people who have been absolutely amazing. Mike Squartrito is our committee chair, and he puts this whole thing together. So he and I spend the day just zigzagging the floor, keeping everything organized and on schedule. But we look forward to it every year. It's a blast.
And as you said, right during the holiday season, you can give the gift of reading if you make your way over to Rhodes on Saturday. Again, family friendly. We'll be sure to provide that link to the event as well. But wanted to get a little update about the bookstore. We had you in here before the bookstore. Stillwater Books launched in Pawtucket. Would like to know how things are going. Talk with us about the events. Talk with us about the community.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we opened, as you know, on March 1st. We had our big grand opening in the spring, and we've been extremely well received by the city and the community. It's been a blast. We had our heart broken by the loss of the Paw Sox, who were supposed to, the Apex building is literally 100 yards from our front door. You know, so that's we're still kind of in recovery from that. But the community loves the fact we're there, and we're one of the few independent stores that carry not just we carry lots of different things, but we just carry over right now 250 different books from Rhode Island authors that you just can't find anywhere else.
And you know, how important is that, especially again to these local authors who are looking to get their books out in front of people, to have that local support and have that local opportunity to showcase and not have to get kind of lost in the jungles of the Amazon, if you will.
Well, writing a book is a very solitary experience. For some writers, you might be working on that book for literally for years, alone, by yourself, and then you suddenly emerge and have to do all this public stuff to try to promote yourself. And you also tend to be an expert in whatever it is you write about, not an expert necessarily in the publishing industry. So you're up against two big problems when you finally have that book completed. So having bookstores that are open and welcoming, where the big chain stores, those that are left, are not. But having those stores that are open and welcoming to local writers and local readers is a huge help and a huge boost for them. And then doing anything we can to do events, signings, readings, to help ease their way into that kind of that marketing part of it that most writers don't want to deal with. That makes a big difference too.
Any plans for 2019 just to keep the momentum going, or what can we expect?
I'm not sure. Right now, with the association, we just keep growing. We're at, as I mentioned, 335 members. We've got our new anthology that just came out, Short Work, which we'll be selling at the Expo. We're just looking for more ways to get involved in the community, more events we can do, more activities. And we're just slowly kind of eating away at the arts community to let them know and realize that, yes, writers are important, and we exist, and there are a lot of us.
And they're right here in Rhode Island, and you can see 135 of them this Saturday at Rhodes at the Pawtucket. And then again, we'll have a link to that Rhode Island Author Expo as well. So Stephen R. Porter with Stillwater Books, I appreciate you taking the time to come in today.
Welcome. I appreciate you having me.
Talking right to viewers. And don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock News and Politics show. We started off with some national politics with Jennifer Lawless at UVA. Got to local literature with Stephen R. Porter. The Rhode Island Author Expo is this Saturday. Tacking back to both local and national news, we have Jared Moffett, who previously headed up the Rhode Island marijuana policy projects efforts here in the States, but he is now currently abroad. Jared, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, we like to say that sometimes folks have that 10,000-foot view that they can really see things from a global perspective. You certainly can. You've taken yourself out of the States for the moment, but you're still very much immersed in the efforts for legalization, both in Rhode Island and around the country.
Yeah, that's right. I played a big role in the Michigan legalization campaign and also the Utah Medical Marijuana Initiative. So I'm still working for the Marijuana Policy Project, and we're really eager to begin the 2019 session in Rhode Island.
So let's talk a little bit about Rhode Island. And of course, we have to go just north of the border to talk about what we've seen so far in Massachusetts. As elected officials here like to say, and as they've liked to say for a number of years, let's wait and see what happens in other states around the country. What's the Massachusetts experience been to date? Apart from, I've seen some reports of a lot of traffic for folks who are trying to turn out to purchase legalized marijuana.
Yeah, I've heard those reports too. I think it speaks to the eagerness that people have to go into a regulated market. And you know, at this point with Michigan, with the successful passage of the legalization law in Michigan, now it's 10 states that have legalized marijuana for adult use. And so, you know, I think there have been plenty of reports that have come out showing what's happened in Colorado and Washington and other states as well. And I think that at this point, of course, there are folks that still disagree with legalization, and we can debate a lot of different aspects of it. But I think everyone is able to make an informed decision at this point about whether or not you know, they agree with it. So I think that's going to be our one of our big arguments in the Rhode Island legislative session is we've waited and seen long enough, and there's really no excuse to delay a vote. You know, again, if people disagree with it, they can vote against it, but there is a reason to have a vote on this issue. We've never gotten a vote in Rhode Island, so I'm very hopeful about this year.
And let's talk about the political landscape with the results of the election here past November. Of course, Governor Gina Raimondo, who says she's open to it, but of course we've seen much more reticence in the House of Representatives from the Speaker. How can 2019 be different than previous efforts when we're looking at the same players? A lot of the same players at the leadership level, but not necessarily the rank and file.
Right. Well, you know, I think that even with the Speaker, and then we can't forget the Senate President, who has, you know, publicly supported legalization before, and the governor has said that she's open to it. I think that look around, not only in Massachusetts, the governor who supports legalization, the Democrats in the legislature are putting marijuana legalization as one of their top 5 agenda items. You've got New Jersey moving forward. Just yesterday, they passed in both committees in the Senate and the House. They passed a legalization bill. The New York Department of Health has come out and endorsed legalization. So I think when you look around all of you know, New England and the Northeast in general, what we're seeing is states are moving past us very quickly. And so I think there's a very pragmatic argument to this, not just the economics of it. We've talked a lot about that in the past, but also just the fact that, you know, Rhode Islanders can now cross the border into Massachusetts, buy marijuana legally, and presumably a lot of them will bring it back. And so, you know, all we're doing right now by not acting is preventing the state from establishing regulations for public health and safety, from collecting revenue to fund police officer enforcement of driving, to do public education campaigns, research, that type of thing. So again, even if you're not a big fan of legalization, I think the pragmatic sort of way to look at it is, look, this is the reality that's cropping up all around us, and we're just not prepared. So I think that's one of our big arguments, and I'm hopeful that that pragmatic sort of perspective will leadership.
So how soon, Jared, do you expect in the 2019 General Assembly session? They do literally come back on the 1st to get sworn in. Do you expect to have that official sort of campaign kickoff here in Rhode Island? You know, obviously we'll see the governor's budget proposal and there'll be a number of items to address early on in the session, but I'm assuming you're looking to tackle it head on right away.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are sort of assessing what our capacity is and what type of resources we have for a campaign, and so that's where we are right now. What I'd like to see is all cylinders on full blast and going as hard as we can in Rhode Island. So I would say that definitely, towards the end of December and beginning of January, we're definitely going to start to be more visible, and we're already sort of, reaching out to legislators and starting to draft the legislation. So yeah, we definitely want to hit the ground running. I don't think there's going to be a bill probably until early February because we need some time to work on that. But yeah, we want to make a big campaign and hopefully get a lot of attention on the issue.
And when you talk about proposing the legislation, obviously you've put forth bills before. Any substantive changes? I mean, the talk again is always wait and see. Let's learn from what the other states have done. Anything big or major that needs to be tweaked from what you've done in years past?
Well, I think that, as time's gone on, we have seen what's worked really well in other states and some things that haven't. I would say that there's not going to be a lot of really significant changes, but one thing that we're definitely want to be sensitive to is, making sure that legislation in Rhode Island doesn't significantly conflict with what's going on in Massachusetts, for example, on like tax rates, things like that. You don't want to create this really, because then folks will probably still cross the border. So there's a lot of minor sort of issues like that. I think the issue of like local control in cities and towns, and that's something that might be a little bit. But overall, I think the basic structure, they regulate marijuana like alcohol because that's something that people can understand. We want to have licensing, we want to have taxes. So the basic idea is going to be the same.
Well, Jared Moffett, again, from outside the United States, we appreciate your taking the time to, again, give us a little update as to what you've been up to, the states where you've had success working with the Marijuana Policy Project, and what we can potentially expect here in Rhode Island in 2019, especially as we're keeping an eye up in Massachusetts, having just gone full scale up there. So we appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you when you're back here in Rhode Island and wish you all the best in the meantime.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kate.
Okay. Thanks, Jared. Jared Moffett with the Marijuana Policy Project, appreciate is taking the time to Skype in today here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock with Laura Afonso and all things food and drink, and I'll be back here at 4. In the meantime, check in with GoLocalProv.com and find us on Facebook. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.